Hello, welcome to another episode of ISCA podcast series. Having with us today, we have Professor Rethinking, a former dean of NUS and also a corporate government advocate. He's been sitting on a lot of committees and also in Vietnam. He also committees on the NIDA. So together with us, also we have Catherine. She's a co-founder of Lonely Corporation and also chairwoman of a subcommittees of Singapore Chamber of Commerce. So today we will discuss about family business and how corporate governance in the context of family business in Asia, right? So, Professor Martin, can you tell us a little bit about how you believe that family business could run to the next or the third generation? We always say that wealth can run to at least to the third generation, right? So, is that a myth or is that true, or what do you think about it?
Well, there's certainly quite a lot of research, right, that supports that family businesses just don't last as long as they should. If you think about three generations, and one generation is 20 to 30 years, how many businesses you think can last that long? So there certainly is, there's evidence out there, and certainly a lot of case studies. I do a lot of case studies, and increasingly I'm seeing, companies, some even in the first generation running into problems, and then moving from the first and second generation. And certainly we now have recently a big case in Singapore where there's a father and son who have been fighting with each other, right? So that's third generation. So certainly in terms of cases, there are certainly a lot of such cases. But if you ask me, if you look at today, if we look at the evidence again, I suspect that many may struggle to survive beyond the first generation, because in the past, I think often you have entrepreneurs, they start off with nothing, they build a business, 70-something-year-old, they are running a business, it's still privatized, they are not thinking about selling out and monetizing their wealth and buying a nice car or big house. But today, often, sometimes you see the younger generation, the minute they have some success with the business, they kind of say, okay, maybe I want to monetize the wealth. So rather than thinking about, continuing the business and maybe passing down. So if you ask me, if anything, I think 3 generations may be optimistic, okay, that going forward it could actually be shorter. And maybe we can talk a little bit more about the Asia context. I think there is also a difference. But I'll leave it for now and then, back after jump in.
Yeah. Catherine, do you observe this pattern in Vietnam from what Professor Matt just shared? It can last for, it's only the young now, they don't really build to last, right? They just build to sell. Is that correct?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me in this session. And it is very honor. You are asking me about 3 generation business when I just started to run and to build my 4 generations. However, I also had a plan to do and to grow my business for my descendants, my sons, or the next generations. And instead of having the same track, I also learn from other people fellow and to see what we can mitigate and can build our business last longer. From my observations from like Asian context or even in Vietnam or even further a little bit like North Asia. So there is many company which is last quite long for like fourth generations, but many also struggling. Like they are very successful, but when doing that and growing their business, they also face with another issue. For example, like we may not forget about the internal conflict between all the family members of Blacklock, their holding group, back to 2015. Or Samsung also have like big drama in terms of business management. And another observation, I also can see that from other countries like Thailand, they also have many big companies where they can grow quite stable. among all generations. For example, take example of Central Group or Ratana, where they hold a lot of the equity and assessment on the Bangkok Bank, one of the largest bank in Thailand. So from Vietnam also, I can see that not so many company because we are at the new economy and we just come out like 60 years and one generation like you say you start up your business and you build it up until you're 70 years old, so that just come at the first generation and the transition to the second generation. So for the third generation, I'm not so sure about this, but we can take a very good example of like Ninh Long Group, where they first founded at 1970, but they're also very good and successful on the transitions to the next generation and the management of the company of the family business to grow until today. So from that observation, plus you share with us earlier about the research, the study to show that about 30% of the company led to second generations and just like less than 12% led to third generation and very small percentage of like 3% of the fourth generation. So this is not about the Western context or the Asian context, but it's about the management efficiency and the vision of the company. So that's from my observations.
Yeah, I think there is a bit of a, I wouldn't necessarily of those stereotypes to say Asia versus Western, but
Yes.
you certainly see some difference in mentality. I mean, if you look at a Singapore company, you know,
Yeah.
that was very successful, was a company called High Flux, right? Benson,
Yes.
founder entrepreneur. Olivia Lam was very entrepreneurial. She started a company. But as the company grew and became basically international,
Yes.
unfortunately, sometimes these founder entrepreneurs fail to recognize that they are entrepreneurs. They are not managers. They are not. They don't have the skills to run international company. So they don't bring in the right talent, right, to be a CEO. So to be willing to say I focus on what I'm good at, which is really be entrepreneurial ideas, and I bring in somebody to run the business who has that international experience. So if you contrast, right, with let's say what happened with Google, you know, Google, two basically techie guys, you know, they founded a company, and then at some point they said we need an adult in the room, so they brought Edwin Smith to be executive chairman. I think, you know, seems to be they recognize that efficiency. Think about Bill Gates, even for Microsoft, right? At some point, you kind of say, yeah, I will step off. I'm willing to be just a chief software officer or something, right? I step back. I don't need that big title to be chairman, CEO, major shareholder, that kind of thing, right? So I think the good companies, right, the entrepreneurs, they really need to recognize that all of us, between the three of us, right? Each of us will have something each of us can do very well, and something each of us cannot do very well, right? I think people need to recognize. If you don't recognize, you can't even go to the second generation. And it's so very difficult sometimes to be able to recognize that, well, maybe my children are just not cut out for business, right? You know, I have two children. None of them are interested in corporate governance. Right? They are not following my footsteps. So I think we need to recognize we can't kind of force and say our children are the best people that can to carry on the management of the company.
So I think power is something that in Asia is something that we all the family visit run, right? They don't want to lose that kind of power. Like you say, you know, in the West, it is really welcome to step back and then invite somebody that knows their how to run and run the company. But for the family generation, trust is one thing, passing down to generation, right? We have a lot of young generation taking management role, manage the company. So what does it take to have a good element in corporate governance?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you see, I think if somebody had the mindset that you want power, I think that's already the wrong starting place. I think I can understand entrepreneurs, founders, they build a business, they want to maintain control. And I think, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes family companies, you want to preserve the family values. And sometimes I've seen cases where you have a family business, you try to bring in a professional manager, and the values are not aligned. That can be a bad thing, right? So I can understand often for family, you want to retain some control. But retaining control doesn't mean you have to be the major shareholder, chairman, CEO, and control the whole board.
Yeah.
You can have control by exercising your right as an owner of the business. If you still hold most of the shares, right? You don't have to be the chairman and CEO. If you don't think the board is informed, you don't think management is informed, you can exercise your right, as a shareholder to make that change. But if you try to then control everything, then you are not going to be just because you're a very good owner, you are good in building a business or starting a business. Doesn't mean you are good in managing. I think we need to recognize that. So I think people need to I want to use the word control. You can still have significant influence over the direction of the business without being actually the CEO of the company.
So, with that being said, can you share with us what is the practical tools that have worked? Like, for example, family constitution, outside advisor, or board. From your experience, what can work as you are first generation business owner, right? What sort of governance that you are implementing to make sure that you build something that maybe can last and maybe can give back to the next generation?
Okay, so it's a very challenging question as well, because from my point of view, and I also agree with Professor Smart, just sharing that you yourself, you cannot do everything very well, and you're only good at one point. And the business owner or the family member, I think we just act as like the stewards who directly our business in the correct vision that we already draw out. And we should have the professional management team to run it and to exercise our rights when we see that something going wrong, or if something is not aligned with your values, what you want to feel. And you should have the clear role between ownership and management role, because I can see and I witness a lot of something went wrong with the management board of director, because they always take dual role. It means that they can hold as the chairman and the CEO at the same time, where the two position, two roles, they have different type of visions and mission to do. So you need to separate it, and instead of to take control of everything, you should allocate it the correct position to the correct people, to the correct ability. So that is one of the tactics that I think now my company, we also do the same thing. We try to get more people on the expertise to join and to contribute the experience and as well as the knowledge on that area. And we are just the directions. We give direction, we give the visions, and we exercise. Everything needs to be aligned with our value. So I believe that is one of the very important key points. And the secondly, I think in terms of family business, we need to manage our people expectations, especially internal conflicts. So you see in Asia, we have many stories, many conflict among brother and sister fighting over the wealth and the control. Like just now I mentioned about the Lotte Holding. When first origins is founding in Japan back to 1940 something, but after that, the younger brother and the elder brother fighting over to take over the chairman position or CEO of the Lotte Holding Group. And during the fighting, the dispute, they don't manage it properly, and it's got like disaster, and it's make loss to the investor and to the business communications, and it's all lead to the like the company origins. So sensitive issue between Japan and Korea. So back to 2015. So I can see that internal conflict between all the family members also the big deal. And in the opposite point of view, I can see like the central group. If they dominate as well, so imagine uh, what is the disaster for the company, right? Because the founders, he found the company and he has 26 children from three different marriages with 220 descendants
Oh, wow.
and 51 get involved actually in the business. So how they going to do it, manage as well and growing to today because they prioritize the family hunting. They divide the different tasks, the different business to allocate them to the people that's capable. And they also invite other people to come to sit on board of management level, not only themselves. So the role very clear path between management role and executive role and ownership role. So these are the two main so-called challenge for the family business.
Yeah, you see, I mean, Central Group is a good example. If you
Yes.
think about Ayala Group, right?
Yeah.
You know, you don't go from now 7 moving to 8, right? Without, and you have so many
Yeah.
family members potentially who could get into the business, right?
Yeah.
Yes, when you start catching, you're still young, right? But at the end of the day, you know, maybe initially you put in a family constitution. I mean, you still need to think about consideration like succession, right? Planning, which is very important, right? What does it take to qualify to join the business? And too many family businesses I've seen, right? You know, they somebody who had barely any experience out of family immediately parachuted to some very senior position within the company, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the Ayala Group type, right, they have family constitution, you need to have certain educational qualifications, and they then are introduced to the business, working, gaining experience in different group companies and so on. And at some point, they then, when they are ready, right, then they get move up slowly. It's not immediately parachuting into that kind of position, right? So I think, you know, otherwise, you know, the family business is going to run into some problem. And also external advisors, right? I mean, too many family businesses, I mean, they claim to use external advisors or they appoint independent directors when they are listed. But you get a family friend to be advisor. I mean, the family friend will just tell you what you want to hear. And the problem with this, right, and I've seen that when there are family disputes, they actually create a problem because if, let's say, I invited a family friend onto the board as independent director, if I start fighting with you, the perception you will have is because you invited that person, the person is going to side with you. The person will never be perceived to be independent. It's better that you bring somebody who's not connected to the family, who really bring at them.
Yeah.
Okay. Then, if anything I can say objectively can look at it, I'm not biased towards you. You know, too many family companies. I've started companies and I look at often I find family companies, I noticed that a lot of them listed companies. Years ago I did one with my student. And we found that a lot of family companies, the independent director only sit on one board, which is their family company board. So it's kind of their family friends. No other board asked them to join. If there's dispute, this person is going to decide in the middle because some family members not going to trust. We see one Malaysian company recently exactly that, right? Because the father start fighting with the wife and the daughters, right? Okay. The independent directors clearly were brought by the father. Okay. The daughter and the wife, of course, and what happened at the annual general meeting? The wife tried to vote out the independent directors. Okay, because probably perceived that they are siding with the husband, right? And then this blows up into the listed company, the public company agreement. So I think that company need to be a bit more open-minded in terms of these kind of issues.
Yeah.
Should you say that a listed family business employing the different standard of corporate governance than a normal company?
Yeah, there are unique issues relating to family companies. So I remember when I was in the first corporate governance committee in Singapore, we look at other unique issues. And one of the unique issues we worried about is uh, a lot of remuneration being taken out by family members. You know, the two biggest risks is related party transactions and excessive remuneration.
Yeah.
Family members, they just put a lot of family members in the business and they take out money rather than pay dividends, right, to shareholders. So in a way for family businesses, to me, those are the two major risks you kind of need to address. But they not only affect family members versus public investors, they affect different family members. As Andrew was kind of saying, I mean, we were talking about the fact that you can have different family members. Some may be shareholders, or they receive dividends. Some are involved in the business, they receive remuneration or pay. If I'm a family member, I'm just a shareholder. I will be very unhappy if some other family member is in the business taking out a lot of pay because it's less dividends for me. So actually, that's important not only in terms of protecting the public investors, that's important for stopping the family members from fighting with each other. Because I'm going to say, well, you are just taking out a lot of remuneration. And some, I've seen also companies that blows up because of unhappiness in how much certain family members are paid. Because they are involved in running the business while others are just sharing it.
Yeah, because family business, then everybody run as family, right? They don't think about it. And one day, you decide to have to let everybody know about what you do.
Yeah.
That is a different story, right?
Yeah.
So, if you have any advice for the this generation, right, the family owner, going to making wealth and then retaining it, what would be a piece of corporate governance related to family and business would you give?
Well, I would say that recognize that your family members are not necessarily the best people to continue running the business, right? So have a family constitution. As I said, when you first start out, you may not need a very elaborate one. At least have some ideas in terms of what qualifications does a person need to get involved in the business. Okay, and then how can the person move up the business? Okay, so I think and maybe how are people going to be paid and so on, because that's also so succession planning, unfair remuneration and all that. Those are common issues. So I would say that think about that. I think those are some of the key. And then it's the family and Patrick actually you see so many family companies, older generations like this.
Yeah.
You have 3 marriages, and then you have all these different children involved in different parts of the family, right? And they're going to fight with each other. And the other thing I remember talking to this group of second generation, very young, 20 something, 30 years old, and they are in a situation where these are some Malaysian kind of family. The father is about to pass, or they're waiting for the parents to pass the business to them. Right? So I remember I was talking to them on Zoom. They wanted some advice. I said, okay, I hop on the Zoom call to you. So there were 6 of them, I think 5 girls and 1 guy. I said, oh, you are very happy with each other. You know that once you get married, you have children and all that, you start fighting with each other. You realize that you go to a joint venture, right? Often you go to a joint venture, you assume you're all very nice and all that. Later on, you fight. You need to think about the scenarios where potentially once you have an extended family, you start using a car. So actually, sometimes also when you talk about the central rule, right? Sometimes it's better that you say if you're going to have multiple businesses, sometimes the worst is you give 2 people the same business. Because when they start fighting, maybe you better say, okay, Steven, maybe you're good in managing a property company. Maybe you get a property company, somebody else get. Because once you get them to share the same, then sometimes you have deadlocks and all sorts of things. So I think those are things also families need to think about. Many of them are not pure governance. They are family governance type. So for family businesses, you need to think not only about the corporate governance, but the business governance, and you need to think about family governance.
So from the Vietnam perspective, I think that government is a bit new here, right?
Yeah.
We talk about all the constitution, but family business owner here, they probably don't know what it is.
Yeah.
It's just like, what is it, right?
Mhm.
So from your observation, what could you share with us? Is a final piece of advice to anyone want to govern their whole family business? Like managing risk and stuff. Who you married or whatever. Could you tell us a little bit about your advice?
Actually, I would not say that my advice, but I think it is better for doing business because we need to see what is the long-term benefits and how we operate it in a better way. And again, for Vietnamese, like you mentioned just now, corporate governance or something is very new because people just come out to do some small business and somehow lucky they become bigger and bigger. But in terms of management, we need to still learn a lot from other country, other colony, which is well established and work very well in many generations, and they have the reasons to go bigger and longer. So to me, very important is still need to have set a very clear boundary line between your ownership and your management. Ownership and professional management is the combination that you need to look into. So you cannot just anyhow like because it's my son, so I put him as the CEO of the group when he don't know anything. We cannot handle the crisis happens and he don't even have the expertise in the area. So this is the first failure, right? So power is very important, but what is more important behind the power, right? In Vietnam, lately I saw the people overuse the CEO word and the chairman word, even the company is just one person. But I saw the name that is chairman and CEO. Yeah, it's very nice. The title is very beautiful outside, but whether is it the correct way to do it? Because somehow people just chase after the titles and it's something that's very short term and appearance in a public look them feel I think that's to make them feel better for to like show the power the position to other people. But in the real business, so normally the people will stay behind and guide the company to grow as a steward only and get all the people with experience, with the ability to handle the jobs. Yeah. So I think this is maybe it's a good way to handle it.
Yeah, I think actually reminded me, right? People who have put big titles, and I sometimes I look a lot, link it a lot. Chairman, CEO, and whatever. You better look at their detail files. Oh, I mean, how the chairman, CEO. So I say sometimes humility is very important, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if somebody is too much in terms of titles, right? Then I think in a way that sometimes can be a red flag because you are kind of showing that the title and power is so important to you.
Yeah.
So I think, so that's also sometimes, sometimes when people ask me to connect LinkedIn, I look at I actually look, this person just put so many things. Actually, look at it. Okay, there's nothing much behind it. And to me, right, that actually to me is a turn off.
Mm-hmm.
So that may be also a way to assess, right? And I think actually made a very important point that family businesses need to be open to bringing in professional management. You cannot think that my family members can just run it.
Yeah.
If you bring in professional management, you also need to help them to succeed because I also hear professional managers extremely experienced. They go to the family business. The family still wants to
Control.
not open-minded
Yes.
in terms of.
Yeah.
I think it's important they want to preserve the family values. I understand that. But if you bring in a professional manager, you kind of have to be open a bit of allowing them to bring their expertise, right? So I know very successful multinational senior managers go in the family business just as a
Don't
work.
worry.
And I would like to add to your point that many family business here just make it look good for themselves because like I appoint independent director, but that independent directors work under my control. And his opinion, his decision making is not independent anymore. Because I think that we still have the mindset that we need to control everything, including the decision making. We give them the title, the positions, but we don't really give them the real power to execute it. So it's a big problem with the Asians, and especially in Vietnam, from my observations. So.
All right, thank you very much. I think from this episode, we get a lot of insight on business, family business in Vietnam, and also corporate governance insight from both speaker. And thank you very much for tuning in. See you at the next episode.